Greetings, friends. I am Vitaly Portnikov. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, has begun his first trip since the inauguration, and it is a visit to Saudi Arabia. A rather unexpected choice for an American president, but a natural one for Donald Trump, who believes that politics should, above all, be measured by economic interests. Saudi Arabia is the country with which Donald Trump intends to establish relations that, in his view, should lead to significant changes for the American economy. After all, it is no coincidence that prior to this visit there was talk, the working of $1 trillion that Saudi Arabia might invest in the development of the United States economy. Moreover, we should understand that the trip to Riyadh is not just about relations with Saudi Arabia alone, but also about the important role of the United States in the Middle East. It is a recognition of this role by the Gulf states, and a dialogue, not only with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed, who personally welcomed Donald Trump at the airport today, but also with the leaders of other Persian Gulf countries. Let us not forget, by the way, that during this trip, Donald Trump will meet in Saudi Arabia with the head of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, and the new president of Syria, Shara, which is also a significant demonstration of the United States' interest in developments in the region. The meeting between the presidents of the United States and Syria, and of course, at this meeting, the head of the Syrian state will speak about the need to lift the sanctions imposed on his country back during the Bashar al-Assad regime, will demonstrate the competition between the United States on the one hand and Turkey on the other for influence in Syria. In this way, it will serve as a reminder to Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan that while he may indeed exert influence over Damascus without American money and without the lifting of sanctions, that influence is unlikely to last long. And a very important aspect of this visit is where Donald Trump will not be going. He will not be going to Israel. And this too, is clearly a completely logical decision by the White House, given the recent new statements about the complicated relationship that has developed between the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu himself continues to state that the war in the Gaza Strip will go on until the terrorist organization Hamas is destroyed, even if the Israeli government agrees to a pause in military operations. But it is precisely this continuation of military actions that clearly does not align with the interests of the President of the United States, who sees that what is happening in the Gaza Strip is causing growing irritation and concern among his Arab allies. The main concern is that the Arab Street is reacting to what is happening in the Gaza Strip very differently from the leaders of the Arab states. And thus, anti-American and anti-Israeli sentiments in the Middle East are intensifying, which also cannot have a positive effect on the dynamics of relations between Washington and Riyadh. This is why there is a visit to the Middle East without including Israel. This is also why there is a willingness to meet with the head of the Palestinian Authority. This is also why there is a willingness to talk with the president of Syria, who has repeatedly been described in Jerusalem as a militant in a suit. This is also why the representative of the President of the United States, Steve Witkoff, says that the United States would like to end the war in the Middle East already, but the Israeli government does not want this and states so publicly. In any case, Donald Trump's meeting with the Saudi prince is meant to demonstrate the real economic potential for cooperation between Donald Trump and representatives of the Middle Eastern monarchies, as well as what actual financial dividends this cooperation will bring. All the more so because we must remember, Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries, in addition to their traditional ties with the United States, are also developing quite intensive relations with China. And it was China that helped Saudi Arabia restore its deteriorated relations with Iran. This was noticed in Washington, and it became quite an unpleasant surprise for the previous administration. Now, Donald Trump will have to restore the influence of the United States that has been lost in recent years in favor of the People's Republic of China, which of course will not easily give up what it has gained. And naturally, There is also the ongoing discussion about what level oil production will be set at. This is a trump card in Donald Trump's relations, and not only with Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern monarchies, but also with the Russian Federation. Donald Trump has repeatedly claimed that if he can reach an agreement with Saudi Arabia and other Gulf oil states to increase oil production, this could create serious problems for Russian President Vladimir Putin against the backdrop of the trade conflict. Between the United States and the People's Republic of China, we have already seen oil prices fall even without any significant increase in production, due to the complex situation that has developed in the global economy. But now, when Washington and Beijing have settled their tariff relations, or at least are very close to such a settlement, oil prices are starting to rise again. This creates additional hopes for Putin and, of course, undermines the plans that Donald Trump has regarding ending the Russian-Ukrainian war. And here, the dialogue between Washington and Riyadh could turn out to be quite important for the Russian leadership. If oil prices really drop sharply, Vladimir Putin will have no real money to continue Russia's war against Ukraine. But again, will Donald Trump be able to persuade the Saudi prince to increase production so significantly and abruptly? First of all, once again, let's not forget about the relationship between Riyadh and Beijing. The People's Republic of China is by no means interested in such a sharp blow to the interests of the Russian Federation. Secondly, let's not forget about the good relationship between Prince Mohammed himself and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Is the Saudi prince interested in the collapse of one of his important allies in the region? Thirdly, let's not forget that any drop in oil prices to critical levels raises the question of the survival of the oil industry in the United States itself. And that is why, in this situation, Donald Trump and Prince Mohammed will, of course, have to talk about a balance that may turn out to be less important if, in Istanbul, actual results can be achieved in any agreements between Moscow and Kiev at the first negotiations between Russian and Ukrainian delegations since 2022. Donald Trump himself has said that he could also come to Istanbul if a meeting between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin takes place in that city. But for now, there is no indication that the Russian president is planning to go to Turkey at all. And the American leader, obviously, will have to postpone his plans for such a trip simply because the talks will be reduced to an expert-level dialogue and will turn into yet another propaganda ploy by Moscow, which is unlikely to lead to any real results. But then, once again, Donald Trump will have to talk to Prince Mohammed about oil prices as a remedy of reason for the Russian president and his entourage, a remedy that could help Moscow abandon its further belligerent plans. Thank you, friends. Stay on this channel, subscribe to it, follow me on my social networks and on my Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee and Donatello channels, which help support the development of these resources. Make use of the sponsorship feature right here on YouTube. Peace to you all.